Welcome to our channel. Today, we're diving into a serious topic, the top 10 countries facing racial challenges around the world. Specifically, we're talking about the top 10 countries facing some of the most serious racial challenges. Now, before anyone throws a strongly worded comment in the suggestion box, this isn't about ranking suffering or saying one country's racism is somehow worse than another's. It's about shining a light on the very real, very persistent problem of racial discrimination across the globe. So, buckle up, grab a beverage, non-alcoholic, we're going to be here a while, and let's unpack this dumpster fire of global injustice together. Let's get started. Our first stop takes us to southeastern Europe, to the country of Serbia. Serbia has a complex history, one marked by conflict and ethnic tensions, particularly in the 1990s. We're talking about the Bosnian War and the Kosovo War, conflicts where ethnic cleansing and atrocities, sadly, weren't just words but terrifying realities for many. While those conflicts have officially ended, their legacy casts a long shadow. Discrimination against minority groups like Roma and ethnic Albanians remains a serious concern. From limited access to education and employment to outright hostility and violence, these communities face an uphill battle for equality. Addressing this requires a genuine commitment to reconciliation, to confronting the past and dismantling the structures that perpetuate discrimination. It's about ensuring that everyone in Serbia, regardless of their ethnicity or religion, has a fair shot at a decent life. Next, we travel to the Arabian Peninsula, to the tiny but incredibly wealthy nation of Qatar. Known for its lavish skyscrapers and the 2022 World Cup, beneath the glitz lies a darker reality. The kafala system ties migrant workers to their employers, giving them immense power. Workers face exploitative conditions, wage theft, and restrictions on freedom. Imagine having your passport confiscated, working in scorching heat, living in unsanitary conditions. Reforms have been made, but critics say they don't address the root causes. Our journey takes us next to Saudi Arabia, a country defined by its oil wealth, its strict interpretation of Islamic law, and its crown prince's ambitious reform agenda. While Saudi Arabia projects modernization, beneath lies a complex reality of race and ethnicity. The kingdom's sponsorship system leaves migrant workers vulnerable. They face exploitation and abuse, and a social hierarchy privileging Saudis. True progress requires dismantling systemic discrimination. Until then, progress will always have a shadow. Chapter 4: Iran, a tapestry of tension. From the Arabian Peninsula, we move northeast to Iran, a land of ancient history, rich culture, and unfortunately, persistent ethnic tensions. Iran is a multi-ethnic country, home to Persians, Azeris, Kurds, Arabs, and other groups. But this diversity, rather than being celebrated, has often been a source of friction and discrimination. Minority groups, particularly Kurds and Arabs, face significant challenges, including restrictions on their cultural and linguistic rights. They often experience discrimination in employment, education, and housing. Their voices are marginalized, their concerns often ignored by those in power. This marginalization can fuel resentment and unrest, creating a vicious cycle of tension and instability. Addressing these deeply rooted problems requires a genuine commitment to inclusivity, to ensuring that all ethnic groups in Iran feel a sense of belonging and equality. It's about celebrating diversity, not suppressing it, and creating a society where everyone feels valued and respected. Chapter 5: Israel, a divided land. Our next stop takes us to a land of profound religious significance, a land of constant headlines and seemingly intractable conflict: Israel. Beyond the geopolitical complexities lies a very real issue of racial and ethnic discrimination. Within Israel itself, there exists a system that often favors Jewish citizens over Arab citizens. We're talking about disparities in everything from land ownership and resource allocation to employment and housing. Arab Israelis often face prejudice, discrimination, and social exclusion. Their voices are often marginalized in the national conversation, their concerns sometimes dismissed. There are efforts to bridge the divide, to promote coexistence and understanding. But the reality is, systemic discrimination persists, and it needs to be addressed head-on if Israel wants to live up to its ideals of being both a Jewish and a democratic state. Chapter 6: Myanmar, a stain on humanity. Our journey takes us now to Myanmar, a country whose name has become synonymous with one of the most horrific acts of ethnic cleansing in recent memory, the persecution of the Rohingya Muslims. The Rohingya, a stateless Muslim minority group, have faced systematic discrimination and violence at the hands of the Myanmar military and Buddhist nationalists. We're talking about mass killings, rapes, and the burning of entire villages. Hundreds of thousands of Rohingya have been forced to flee their homes, seeking refuge in neighboring Bangladesh and other countries. The UN has called it a textbook example of ethnic cleansing, and yet justice remains elusive. The world must not forget the plight of the Rohingya and must continue to demand justice and accountability for the crimes committed against them. Chapter 7. From the tragedy of Myanmar, we move to the gleaming towers of the United Arab Emirates, a federation of 7 emirates known for its luxurious cities, its booming economy, and its, shall we say, flexible approach to human rights. The UAE, much like its neighbor Qatar, relies heavily on a vast workforce of migrant laborers from South Asia and Africa. These workers, drawn by the promise of higher wages, often find themselves trapped in a system that prioritizes profit over human dignity. We're talking about exploitative working conditions, passport confiscation, and limited access to justice. The kafala system, though officially abolished in the UAE, still casts a long shadow, leaving migrant workers vulnerable to abuse. The UAE's rapid development and glittering facade often obscure the very real human cost of its economic success. Addressing this imbalance requires a fundamental shift in mindset, one that values the rights and dignity of all workers, regardless of their nationality. Chapter 8. Russia, the Bear's Shadow. Our journey takes us now to the largest country in the world, spanning 11 time zones and encompassing a vast tapestry of cultures, Russia. Russia has long struggled with issues of xenophobia and racism, particularly directed towards people from Central Asia, the Caucasus, and Africa. This prejudice often manifests itself in hate crimes, discrimination in employment and housing, and even police brutality. The rise of nationalist sentiment in recent years has only exacerbated these problems. Migrants and ethnic minorities often become scapegoats for economic woes and social anxieties. Creating a more inclusive and tolerant society in Russia requires a concerted effort to combat hate speech, to promote understanding and respect for diversity, and to hold those in power accountable for their actions. Chapter 9. El Salvador, Scars of the Past. Our penultimate stop takes us to Central America, to the small but densely populated nation of El Salvador. El Salvador carries the scars of a brutal civil war and a legacy of deep-seated racial discrimination. We're talking about the systematic marginalization of indigenous communities, particularly the Pipil and Lenca people. Despite making up a significant portion of the population, these communities often face discrimination in access to education, healthcare, and employment. Their cultural traditions are often overlooked or dismissed, their languages marginalized. Addressing these injustices requires a commitment to social justice, to recognizing the rights of indigenous communities, and ensuring their full participation in El Salvador's social, economic, and political life. Chapter 10. Sri Lanka, an island divided. Our final stop on this whirlwind tour of global racial injustice takes us to an island nation known for its stunning beauty, its delicious tea, and its long and troubled history of ethnic conflict, Sri Lanka. Sri Lanka has been plagued by tensions between its 2 main ethnic groups, the Sinhalese majority and the Tamil minority. This conflict, rooted in colonial-era policies that favored the Sinhalese, erupted into a brutal civil war that lasted for over 2 decades. While the war officially ended in 2009, the scars of conflict run deep. Tamils continue to face discrimination, marginalization, and the lingering effects of wartime trauma. Addressing the root causes of this conflict requires a genuine commitment to truth and reconciliation, to addressing past injustices, and to creating a society where both Sinhalese and Tamils feel a sense of belonging and equality. Building a better world, one video at a time. So, there you have it, a glimpse into the complex and often disheartening reality of racism around the world. We've traveled from the Balkans to the Middle East, from Asia to Central America, and the one constant we've encountered is the persistence of prejudice, discrimination, and inequality. It's easy to feel overwhelmed, to throw your hands up in despair and say, well, that's just the way the world is. But here's the thing. It doesn't have to be this way. Change is possible, but it requires action. It requires speaking out against injustice, challenging our own biases, and demanding better from our leaders. Thank you for watching. If you found this video informative, please like, share, and subscribe to our channel for more content. Let's continue to raise awareness and work towards a more inclusive world.